General Hospital Today will reveal the revelations unfolding in General Hospital hint at a dramatic and potentially heartbreaking twist in Britt Westbourne's storyline. At the center of this development is the possibility that Britt, long believed to be battling Huntington's disease, may in fact have been manipulated into believing she had the condition. The shocking implication is that Britt's illness could be a fabricated lie, an elaborate medical deception tied to psychological conditioning and pharmaceutical control. The catalyst for uncovering this truth may very well be Jason Morgan, whose instincts, loyalty to Britt, and pursuit of the truth could drive him to do the unthinkable, steal her medication and uncover what's really inside. That act, whether driven by desperation, suspicion, or love, could unravel everything. Britt's entire emotional and professional journey since returning to Port Charles has been colored by her grim diagnosis. She believed her time was limited, and that belief shaped her choices, her relationships, and her sense of purpose. Her willingness to work with dangerous figures and accept morally questionable assignments could be traced to belief that she was running out of time. But if her condition was fabricated, if the supposed symptoms were chemically induced rather than naturally occurring, the betrayal is almost unimaginable. It would mean that not only Britt was emotionally manipulated, but that her physical health was being engineered by others with a much darker agenda. At the heart of this potential conspiracy are director Ross Cullum and Jen Sidwell, whose involvement in covert medical trials and underground experimentation has long been a source of concern. Their access to experimental drugs, along with their ambiguous ties to Caesar Fison's legacy, places them in a position of power over Britt. Reports suggest that Cullum and Sidwell have been controlling Britt's behavior and physiological responses by modifying the dosage of a specific injectable medication. Britt's dependency on this drug has grown steadily, both out of fear and out of perceived medical necessity. She believes that missing a single dose could trigger a rapid and irreversible decline. That belief, however, might be the very thing keeping her trapped. This fear-driven dependency has allowed Ross and Jens to effectively imprison Britt without physical restraints. As long as she believes in her condition and fears the absence of treatment, she remains pliable and controllable. In this context, pretending she has Huntington's makes the entire operation more airtight. No one questions a dying woman's behavior, especially one who claims to be trying to find meaning in her final years. It is a sinister manipulation, one that robs Britt not only of her agency, but also of her right to the truth. Her mind, her body, her legacy, they all have been weaponized by those who once claimed to offer help. The drug in question is to have originated from the work of the infamous Caesar Fison, Britt's estranged father. While this gives the story a plausible scientific thread, Fison was known for his genius in biochemical research. It also complicates the moral terrain. If Britt believes the medication was developed by her father before his death, it would reinforce the lie and dissuade her from questioning its legitimacy. The idea that this drug might not be a treatment for Huntington's, but rather a sedative or neurochemical suppressant used to manipulate her mood, motor function, or memory is deeply disturbing. It implies that not only conspiracy against Britt, but also the continuation of Fison's legacy through new and perhaps even more unethical channels. Jason's role in this unraveling thread is crucial. His long-standing connection to Britt and his instincts as both protector and enforcer put him in the perfect position to uncover the truth. Jason doesn't trust easily, but he reads people well. If he suspects something is off, especially with how Britt has been behaving, it's entirely within character for him to dig deeper, even if it means crossing lines. Stealing her medication, running tests on it, or even confronting those behind her treatment might reveal the darkest truth yet. That Britt has never had Huntington's and that she has been subjected to psychological and biochemical illusion designed to enslave her emotionally and physically. The ramifications of such discovery would ripple across Port Charles. It would call into question every medical facility, every doctor who administered the treatment, and every alliance Britt has forced since receiving her diagnosis. It would destroy her trust in science, medicine, and in herself.
More devastatingly, it could cause an irreversible rift between Britt and Jason, should she learn that he violated her privacy to obtain the truth. Even if his motives were pure, the betrayal could compound the trauma she's already endured. And yet, if Jason is right, if Britt was never sick, then he would have saved her life. He would have freed her from a narrative of death and despair that was never hers to live. But liberation may not come without pain. Britt would be forced to confront the years she lost, the choices she made under false pretenses, and the emotional armor she built to cope with her diagnosis. She may also come to realize that those who claim to care for her like Cullum and Sidwell were using her as a pawn in a much larger game. Her past would be rewritten, her present thrown into chaos, and her future left hanging in uncertainty. Ultimately, the question becomes, what is more devastating, the belief that you're dying or the discovery that you've been lied to about it? Britt may soon face the agony of learning that her identity, her suffering, and her sense of purpose were constructed by men who viewed her as an experiment rather than a person. And Jason, the man who once held her heart and now risks everything to protect her, might become both her savior and the symbol of her deepest violation. As the lines blur between truth and manipulation, the only certainty is that someone stands to lose everything. Britt Westbourne's deteriorating condition has become one of the most emotionally charged and suspicious storylines in General Hospital, especially now as new layers begin to unravel the mystery surrounding her supposed Huntington's diagnosis. While she appears to experience clear physical symptoms, muscle tremors, cognitive lapses, fatigue, particularly when she goes too long without her injections, a far more disturbing possibility has begun to take shape. What if the very symptoms she's exhibiting are not the result of a degenerative neurological disease at all, but the consequence of long-term exposure to a drug that was intended to cause such deterioration over time? The idea that Britt may be trapped in a cruel pharmaceutical illusion grows stronger with every desperate plea for her next dose. At first glance, the medication appears to offer relief momentarily, soothing her anxiety-suppressing tremors, and giving her a sense of clarity. But what if that relief is the bait, and the real function of the drug is far more sinister? If the substance she's been receiving is not a treatment but a carefully crafted cocktail designed to mimic the progression of Huntington's, it would explain why her symptoms manifest more violently when a dose is delayed. Withdrawal rather than disease progression might be driving her panic. Her brain and body may have become so chemically dependent on the substance that even the threat of interruption induces a cascade of physical and emotional collapse. In this light, Britt's suffering is not the result of an incurable condition, it is the deliberate outcome of a manipulative experiment, one she never consented to. This revelation opens the door to a more insidious form of control. If Britt's condition is artificially induced, then the drug she believes is saving her is in fact the very thing slowly poisoning her. Its effects may have been precisely timed, providing comfort and stability for a few days, only to plunge her into confusion, pain, and helplessness when the effects wear off. The cycle ensures compliance. Britt, fearful of the consequences of withdrawal, clings to the treatment, convinced that without it she will die. She may feel grateful to the very people orchestrating her suffering. This is the psychology of dependency weaponized to its most devastating degree. Her desperation to maintain access to the drug keeps her tethered to the medical authorities around her, granting them total control over her decisions and movements. Yet there's an even darker twist to consider. What if the drug wasn't originally intended to treat Huntington's at all? What if it was designed for a separate condition, perhaps one less fatal, more manageable, and entirely different in its neurological impact? The side effects Britt is experiencing could then be considered unquote off-label consequences of prolonged misuse, possibly even exacerbated on purpose through subtle changes in dosage or chemical composition. This raises the terrifying possibility that Britt may have had a different to more benign illness all along, one that was not only misdiagnosed, but deliberately mislabeled to trap her in this loop. Such deception would be more than unethical, it would be criminal, a violation of every principle of medical integrity. The origin of the medication also remains shrouded in ambiguity. It is widely believed by Britt and those close to her that the drug was developed by César Faison, her estranged father, as part of his legacy of biochemical research. But this too could be part of the manipulation. If the creators of the drug, perhaps Ross Cullum, Jen Sidwell, or even Victor Cassadine, wanted to ensure Britt would never question the treatment, tying it to the memory of her brilliant but morally bankrupt father would be a genius move. It would lend the treatment credibility while also silencing doubts. After all, who would question a formula crafted by a known genius in neurological experimentation, especially if that genius also happens to be your father? And yet, this connection could be the smokescreen that masks the real source and real purpose of the drug. Speculation among GH fans has long circulated around the idea that Britt's original Huntington's diagnosis may have been tampered with. Victor Cassadine, a master manipulator with an affinity for psychological warfare, has been repeatedly mentioned as a possible orchestrator behind the scenes. It would not be beyond him to influence lab results or pay off medical personnel to create a narrative of terminal illness. His potential motive: to recruit Britt for an operation that required loyalty, silence, and desperation. What better way to ensure her cooperation than to convince her she was dying and that only his resources could offer temporary reprieve? If Victor indeed manipulated her diagnosis, then everything that's happened since her relationships, her career choices, her willingness to work under shady authority has been rooted in a lie. She wasn't living her truth. She was living a carefully scripted tragedy. Now, as Britt's physical symptoms worsen and her emotional stability falters under the strain of withdrawal and fear, the questions loom larger than ever. Is she truly ill? Or is she being made to feel ill through pharmaceutical gaslighting? If her symptoms are timed with the administration of her so-called treatment, then the medication is not a cure, it's a leash. She may be unknowingly participating in a cruel experiment whose parameters are hidden, and whose purpose remains unclear. Her decline could be the result of systematic poisoning disguised as care. And the people she trusts the most may be the very ones orchestrating her downfall. The deeper implication of this storyline extends beyond Britt's personal tragedy. If true, it would signal the existence of a shadow network within the medical establishment of Port Charles, one capable of altering diagnoses, creating fictional illnesses, and designing drug regimens for purposes of control rather than cure. It would suggest that power in Port Charles is no longer defined solely by wealth or criminality, but by access to pharmaceutical and neurological manipulation. And Britt, once a respected doctor herself, has become the ultimate victim of this twisted science. As Jason begins to question the source of Britt's medication and possibly test its chemical properties, he may be the one person capable of pulling her out of this nightmarish trap. But the cost of discovering the truth could be enormous. Not only would it shatter Britt's trust in everyone around her, it could also force her to re-examine every choice she's made since receiving her diagnosis. It would be a reckoning of identity, of purpose, and of belief. Worse still, it may be too late. If the drug has altered her brain chemistry beyond repair, there may be no going back. What lies behind those syringes might not just be medicine. It might be the embodiment of a greater conspiracy, one in which human suffering is just a tool for power. And if that's the case, then Britt's fight is no longer just for her life, but for her mind, her truth, and her autonomy. The next injection she takes could be the one that breaks her. Or if Jason intervenes in time, it could be the last lie she ever believes.